Hello, it's Fred Atwater
Mr.
here.
Owl, how many licks does it take to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop?
A good question. Let's find
Hmm.
out. One,
Two,
two,
three.
three, three.
If there's
Mm-hmm.
anything I can't stand, it's a smart owl.
How many licks does it?
All right, hey, it's Fred Atwater here. Classic 1970s era, I think, commercial. Might have been 60s, I don't know. It's a pretty old-fashioned style commercial, but I do remember it from being a little kid. And I put it up there because I had a question on the forum that I'd kind of formulated in my head. I'm sure it's been asked before by people, but wanted to work through the math myself instead of just blanket asking the question. And it's a bit of a challenging question because it takes into you have to understand how futures contracts work, and you have to understand how options contracts work. They're two completely different products offered by two completely different agencies. The futures on the CME and options on the CBOE, CME Chicago Mercantile, and then the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and then the options on the Chicago Board Options Exchange. Two, like I said, two completely different products. Those two products, though, do have derivatives that focus on one specific underlier that this question is based on, called the S&P 500. The stock market, you can trade an ETF called the SPY, SPY, the spiders, whatever you want to call them. It's approximately a 1/10 reflection of the S&P 500 index. If you just go over here and Google CNBC, .com, over here you can see that the S&P 500. Let's see, once we get past the ads and the stupid news stories here. So the Donald Trump calls it fake news. I just call it stupid news. But anyway, so the S&P 500 index in this case on Friday closed at $2,872.87. I want you to note something because it's important to these academics that I'm going to go through here quickly. 2872. The SPY approximates about 1/10 of that index. So if I type in SPY here and see what the share, it's going to be about 1/10 of that. Look at that, it's 286. That other one was what do we see? 2870, 286. Or here, let's go back and see what that was. 286.58 was there. I already forget what the number was. 2870. Come on. Yeah, 2072. So yeah, very, very, very close, within a hundredth of a decimal to 10%. That always applies. The SPY is always about 1/10 of what the S&P index reflects. Why is that important? Because here is the question of the hour. All right. So this is an academic chalkboard session. It's Sunday morning here. Let's see what we can talk about here. Here's the question. All right. What is an approximate number or an equivalent number of SPY at the money? If I type ATM, that's what I mean, at the money contracts to an E-minis S&P futures contract. All right. So those that know want to know some more about these products, just go on the internet, right, and look up Investopedia or any other about 80 million sources about what a futures contract is, which is what this is, and this is specific to the E-mini S&P 500, and this is explaining what a position delta is on the options market. All right, I'm not going to necessarily explain those on this video because it's way too in depth, but what I do want you to note here is the E-mini S&P 500 has a contract size $50 times the S&P 500 index. I just introduced those indexes to you right off of CNBC. It's on every nightly news. It's on every CNBC station. I mean, it's everywhere. It's broad, but it's ubiquitous. So if the S&P was at 2580, which it was just a matter of probably a couple of weeks ago, because the market's been on fire hot lately, at 20 when the market was at 25.80, a futures contract size has a control value of $129,000, which is 50 times the price there. All right. For those that are not quite sure what futures are, this doesn't mean I have to put up $129,000 in capital. All right. I have what's called a margin requirement that I forget what it is exactly. It's about $6,000 or so. It goes up and down. It changes a little bit. An initial margin requirement on a contract. So for $6,000-$7,000, whatever that contract specification is, I can control $129,000 in stock. All right. So go back to the question of the moment here, which was, what is the approximate number of SPY contracts, at-the-money contracts, to an E-minis S&P 500? All right. The answer here is, it depends. Okay. Exciting conclusion, right? We must freeze time in order to answer. Why? Because options deltas move with underlier movement. Okay, so our answer is is representative of a point in time. Okay, that's the basis of how to answer this particular question. All right, so we know we must let's try this. We must ask the question in a slightly different manner. At index, let's use the example we just saw over there. At an index of $2,580, one contract, how many equivalent ATMs? To one futures contract. There we go. Now I can work with that. So 2580 times, we set a $50 multiplier per contract on the futures. Let's make sure we, for anybody that's going to follow this futures contract, 2580 times 50, we said, we already knew it was $129,000. So how do I control $129,000 dollar for dollar with ATM contracts on SPY? Okay, there's a much more better version of the question, because now I've froze time and I've translated two products, the CBOE product, okay, which is the options derivative, and I've converted the CME product, the futures, into a commonality figure, 129,000 US dollars. All right, how do I control $129,000 with ATMs? All right, let's talk about that. Let me get the bad boy there. Okay, so if SP index at 2580, that means SPY is at about 258. Okay, so how many contracts? So wait, let's ask them. Each contract controls 100 shares times delta. Okay, remember I said over on that website, Google options delta. So at the money is a key to the question. Always at the money, delta is equal to 0.5. So one contract controls 100 shares times 0.5 equal to 50 deltas. All right, that's a different term. I'm not even going to express that. Controls, let's say a 50% share price. Okay. Getting in the weeds here. So, all right, so 50%. We got some numbers to go. All I need to do is express this together. The math works like this. At $258 per share times 100 share multiplier is equal, and times the delta is equal to how many dollars? All right. The answer is, well, let's do it on here. Remember, this is a chalkboard session. Rewind it. Do what you need to understand it. But I worked on this question last night with my wife over dinner. She's like, can we please stop talking about futures and options and just enjoy dinner? We had this thing called Chinese hot pot. You put some fish in a boiling pot. It was good. So anyway, the answer here is $12,900. All right. Control U. The answer is 12,900. So, how many units of 12,900 fit into $129,000 futures contract? And I think the obvious answer is 129,000 divided by 12,900 is equal to 10. The answer, frozen in time, is 10 contracts. ATM. All right. So why on earth am I asking this? I'm building a system to hedge my futures contracts, long or short, with an equivalent, with a calculable or understandable amount of counter contracts on the options market. What does that mean? So if I'm going to go short $129,000 with a short futures contract, I want to buy, let's say I went short 129,000. I want to buy, let's say I want a half hedge on the thing. I'd buy 5 ATM calls on the options market. That's a half hedge against that. It's a methodology for controlling risk. There's a lot of things that happen on the options market, like theta decay, gamma movement of the hedges and stuff like that. Much more complicated. I can go way geekery more than this on how the thing moves, but the opposite is true here as well. If I want to go long a $129,000 contract here, I want a half hedge to buy 5 ATM puts. Okay. See how I have a negative here and this is a negative number, boom, and I have a positive direction with long calls, and this is a positive number, so that's, in other words, this is a bearish position with a bullish hedge. This is a bullish position with a bearish hedge to the market. It's a way to control my losses if I'm wrong. It tempers the nature of futures contracts because they are very highly leveraged products. Like I said, you can control $129,000 with $6,000-$7,000 in margin, and it moves. Boy, if you've ever traded futures, they do move. And when they go the wrong way, they can go the wrong way really quickly. You can lose a lot of money. So you always want to hedge. These are opposing hedges from a different derivative that allows you to do that. I have this project, and I'm going to end on this note here, that we're going to call it the Make $1 Million by Tuesday project. Now, the Tuesday is going to happen to be 5 years in the future. I might hit the goal early, 3 years. I might hit it later, 6, 8. Who knows? I may not hit it at all. I might fail. But we're going to set some parameters. We're going to publish some parameters on how we're going to do that. I will tell you, one of the things I'm going to do is use all the instruments I have available to me, all the tools that I have, all the knowledge and all the experience to make this happen. I'm going to publish the trades. Hopefully I'll have time to publish them ahead of execution. We'll just send a notice of execution, and then we'll say a management plan as the trade progresses. And we'll see if we can make $1 million. All right. Making $1 million in the market is pretty straightforward activity. You just have to believe that you can do it, and you got to use some tools, and that's what all this stuff is. And oh my gosh, you have to hedge your positions. All right, thanks y'all for watching. Go back and watch that about 50 times if my nerdery is too much there. And let's end with a little more fun song here. All right. Because I want $1 million. Everybody wants to be a rock star or a millionaire. Right? There you go, everyone.